Hi guys, welcome to Unknown Charlotte. My name is Marcel and we're here with Steve Matchett and we're looking at our C1 1953 Corvette. Steve, let me just say thank you for joining us.
And you're very welcome. Thank you very much for inviting me down, and thank you for showing me this wonderful example of a C1, I'm going to say first generation.
That's it.
Corvette. And what a great history it has. You know this car. I'm aware a little bit of, I'm not from the world of Chevrolet, as you know. I'm from the world of Ferrari and Formula One engineering, but I am always fascinated by automotive technology in all its forms. And of course, the C1 Corvette has such a great place in automotive history. It's instantly attractive to me.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many things that I can tell you about origin stories that attract me to vehicles. There's no way I could call myself a Corvette guy. I love cars altogether, but I'm not the source on Corvettes by any means. The first generation of everything sets the foot moving forward for all the cars that we've seen come out, whether it be 700 horsepower one, 600 horse. It all started from somewhere, and this is what's great about this vehicle. 1953, as you know, it's the first year. They only made 300 of these, and this was more like a trial by fire. Make this composite / fiberglass body the best way you can. It's a project built not really on anything that had blueprints on, right? This is a first for Chevrolet.
Yes.
This is a first for an American manufacturer to ever attempt this. So, the beauty in this is that it is the grandfather to all the children that have come after it.
Now, when you cast your eye and the light strikes the bodywork of this car, you can see straight away that it is composite. You can see that, right? It looks, with all due respect to the engineering of the time, it looks like a Hessian sack material. You can see the layup of the cloth underneath the paint.
Yeah, true to fiberglass weave, it intersects, and if you catch it in the right angle, you could definitely see it all throughout its panels.
Now, I would say, and correct me if you feel I'm wrong here, but in terms of restoration of any C1, you don't. It would be very easy now with technology in 2021 to make all of that visual effect on the bodywork go away. But it would be a horrible thing to do because you would lose the history of the car.
Right, I feel like more and more shows are becoming concourse quality level restorations, and that would be a lie to what the manufacturer was doing in its time. There are going to be gaps, there are going to be inconsistencies, and there are going to be very big openings and such questionable things that we as today would look and be like, that was horrifically done. But that is what they did in the first times of a vehicle. You want to do that again?
No, I love what you're saying. But you bring up a very good point. In the world of automotive restoration, it's very critical to not over restore.
Right.
It's so easy to do that, again, because all the technology that we have at our fingertips in 2021 means all the shut lines on the car could become perfect. All the bodywork would look completely flawless. But you don't want to do that, because when you're restoring correctly, you want to bring it back to exactly as it left the factory or as close as you can to that.
Right.
Now, my understanding on the composite bodywork on the Corvette was it was, as you said, it was a concept car originally. The concept car, the original concept car for the Corvette was also done in fiberglass or glass fiber. And then the engineers, when we got into the first year of production, wanted to carry that over. Now, I've heard there's also a story that suggested, well, it was just after the end of the Second World War and there was a metal shortage and we were trying to do the best we could, we, Chevrolet, or the automotive industry in general, to try and save steel. Well, I think that's a complete nonsense, because there were millions of cars being made out of steel at the time. I don't buy that. But I do like the idea that it was the designer's desire to use composite materials. Now, this is very early generation and understanding of composite materials, but if you come full circle to 2021, you look at Ferrari and Lamborghini and all the rest of the European manufacturers now, they're all using composite materials. Yes, they're using carbon fiber and not glass fiber, but you can see the attraction was, oh, you know what, that's actually not such a bad thing to do.
Yeah, in its time, my interpretation of Chevrolet in the 50s was they were not only a mechanical engineering firm or an automotive company, they were also a stylish firm. So plastics and fiberglass was the material, or seen as the material of the future.
We've always said, we've said it on different videos throughout the years, that we only got here from there. You look at this as the start. So you look at all composite cars that are coming out of the manufacturers now, here's your starting point. But this had to exist before anything else can exist. It's a wonderful thing. I like it very much for that. I also like it with the fact that it's got a wonderful engine and transmission story. I'm going to go around to the other side of the car and look at this straight six engine. Not a V8 engine in the car. It was a straight six engine, right? It was the Blue Flame. It's even painted with graphics on the cover, Blue Flame.
Do you think a marketing team had something to do with that?
Well, I think the Blue Flame name, my understanding is that was around with Chevrolet for a while, and they wanted to use the best engine they could in the Corvette, and so they wanted to carry on with that Blue Flame idea. And again, this is perhaps something I remember more than you because of our age difference, but I remember a tuning device many, many years ago that was called the Blue Flame. And the idea was that you took a spark plug out and you screwed in this little adapter, and when you played with the timing and the carburation on the car, you could look down through a tube and see that the flame inside the combustion chamber would change from orange to blue. So when you had that blue flame, everything was as spot on as it could be. You remember that?
No, I don't remember that. I've heard of this stuff. It's the perfect mixture.
It's the perfect mixture. So that was what the blue, that's what my understanding is, that's where the name, the Blue Flame originated from, because it was the perfect combustion inside the engine. Whether that's true or not, but I do remember that tune-up device. I'm sure it's called something like Blue Flame. That's what the internet's for, be able to find out more about that. But I have had, I think 3 first-generation Camaros in my life. One of them was a straight six, and two of them had a V engine in, 350 V engine. But I have to say, I had no problems or complaints about the straight six engine in that Camaro. Because you have to remember, fundamentally, this is an engine that's been with Chevrolet for years before.
This is their workhorse at this time.
It was the workhorse. It was, and again, I mean no disrespect to Chevrolet at all, it was a truck engine.
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing wrong with it being a truck engine, but what it does mean is, if you imagine the extra weight of a truck, and then you take that same engine and put it in a composite car, you've got heaps of torque because the engine was designed to get a truck moving. And now you put it into a relatively lightweight car. In terms of reliability, it was almost bulletproof. So as far as I'm aware, all that Chevy's engineers did with the Corvette was they put a different camshaft in, I think, upgraded the horsepower to around 150, changed the induction system with this, I want to say just jet age looking. It's like something, doesn't it? It looks like something from a cartoon of the 1960s. You just said that's where we were going with the jet age.
Right.
Those bizarre bullet-shaped air induction system on the throats of the
It looks quite restrictive,
carburetors.
as a matter of fact. But
It
how
really
much
does.
This engine really need?
Yeah, it
you
really
need to
does.
make it look good, and that's what it also is very appealing.
But I think the story of the engine, the Blue Flame engine, the story of the upgrades with the carburetors and the cam to get it up to 150 horsepower, plus the composite design of the bodywork. And the fact is, after that first production run in 1953, it was touch and go whether or not that project would continue.
Yeah,
It was like,
yeah.
well, I'm not sure if that's really where we want to be going, but thank goodness it did continue, because the legend of Corvette started right here. This is where it began.
That's why I love this vehicle so much. It's definitely a footprint in history of where we've come from. And I think they had a hard time selling these first year cars because everybody was unaware of what it was. It was over stylized, and again, it looked more marketing than a vehicle.
Yeah.
It was more like a project gone, a prototype gone mass production.
Well, there is something about human nature that they always say we don't like change, or we like trusted things, right? Trusted design. And of course, this was not a trusted design. It was a brand new design. We've just talked about it, talked about the bodywork. The engine was well known, but it was something very futuristic at the time. And again, my understanding is that the reason for the car to exist was because after the end of the Second World War, a lot of military personnel were returning from Europe and bringing some of those very lightweight European cars over to the United States, and Chevrolet wanted to get in on the act.
That makes sense.
This is what they came up with. Tell me a little bit more about this particular car. You know the history of this car, and I don't.
This vehicle in particular has been restored already. if you can imagine, they're all Polo White, they're all red leather interior.
All of that year, right?
All of that year,
Yeah,
1953, all 300 of them were the
Right.
same combination. I think
You can have any color you like, providing it's white.
Yeah, there was a weird combination option. I think it was the stereo or the heater box. That was the only options you got on these cars.
I remember reading that,
Right.
and every example in 53 had them. So although they were options,
They just put them in there.
they were in there anyway.
Yeah.
I like that.
And since this has been restored, but not over-restored,
Yes.
we can still see the weave on the fiberglass.
Yes.
We can still see the inconsistency on the door gaps, on the shut lines. And
Yeah,
so
here it is. Here we see that a little wider gap at the top. But again, I don't think there's anything
No.
wrong with that because that's how it left the factory.
the value comes from having the first one. And this is the first year, like I said, the limited numbers and all that. But when you restore a vehicle and you get to see some of the original stuff on it, yet it's not completely, what's the word, abandoned. You know, this has been taken care of, it's been looked after, it's been
Yeah.
ran all this time. And we're lucky enough to have it here to sell, but more enough to keep curating and keep establishing what it is, a piece of history.
I'm always fascinated by the history of automotive engineering. And to see, I'm going to call it a first generation car. Maybe that's not technically correct. Folks would refer to it to be called a C1. But a first generation Corvette as the starting point of what came after, I think is a wonderful thing. I'm fascinated by all of that. I always have been fascinated by history, but when you actually see a piece of, let's describe it as living history. Here it is. We can look at the car, and it shows us exactly what the Corvette design team were thinking at the time, and the advancements that would come after that. Next generation of the car, I think, had a supercharger to try and give it more horsepower. And then in later generations along came the V8s came on. But everything has to have a starting point, and this is a wonderful example of it. You look at the integration of the tailpipes, you look at almost any SUV that's produced now, they all do that.
Right, now that I agree with.
Yeah.
It's the tail light, it's the license plate holder
cover, yeah.
that has never been encased again for the most part.
When we look round at a first generation Corvette, there are a couple of styling cues. There's lots on the front, of course, and we've already mentioned a lot about the bodywork and the engine. Two things that immediately grabbed my attention. One is this wonderful, again, jet age looking cover around the license plate holder to allow the air to flow from the front of the car over the back without spilling into turbulence right at the rear of the car. Whether or not it made a difference aerodynamically, who knows, and I don't really care. I just think it looks really cool. But the other thing is the integration of the tailpipes from the exhaust system into the bodywork here. Well, we keep mentioning the fact that we only got here because we started there. But now if you look at many SUVs, for example, that idea of many cars, but certainly in SUVs, you see it all the way. You see that the exhaust outlet is integrated into the design of the rear of the car. And that's exactly what these guys were doing. Guys and gals were doing back in 1953. Isn't that cool?
We're lucky to be having such examples in front of us, telling us where we came from and seeing it where it came from.
Yeah, I like that very much.
I love looking at also the lines where it sweeps forward and backwards. This car has almost a 1950s, 60s Batmobile shape to it, if you could say that. But I feel like it's also a tie-in to, again, Chevrolet's marketing. They wanted to create something that was outlandish and setting the precedence of American culture moving forward.
Yeah, I think if you look at the point of history when this car was made, I agree with you 100%. We're just getting to the point of the space age is just around the corner. The jet age is coming. We're right in that era, and that idea of styling cues coming from aviation is very evident on this. I want to thank you very much for showing me this wonderful piece of automotive history.
Well, thank you for looking over this with me, Steve.
You're
This has
very
been
welcome.
a pleasure. And thank you guys for watching.